the important thing to understand is that every experience you have has the capacity to even a little bit change your brain's function in the future. Every experience you make for yourself that you curate or that you have has the capacity to change your wiring a little bit. And over time, you can have more flexibility and therefore more control over your actions towards your goals. You might even change your goals, or you might change what it means to implement your goals based on the richness of your experience. So
what do you say to people that are stuck on something in the past?
Well, sometimes people are stuck on something. It depends on why they're stuck. So it's not always a matter of willpower, I guess, is the thing. I think one of the things that, let me just say that, I'll try to think of how to say this. I originally, when I went to graduate school, I was originally training to not be a neuroscientist. I was originally trained to be a therapist. And one of the things I felt like, I felt that sometimes in some of the psychotherapeutic treatments, I don't want to say that they were disrespectful to people, but I felt a little bit like,
interesting.
People, when someone is feeling really bad, this is their way of being in the world. And if they could change it by snapping their fingers and doing something different, they would. So obviously they can't. And it's not because they're weak. And it's not because, now we would say, oh, well, that person's a snowflake. It's not because they're snowflakes. It's because they're human. So here's what I guess this is the conclusion that I've come to after, I was always sort of uncomfortable with, just change how you think and that will change how you feel. That's actually not true, by the way. And it's also, even if it were, it would be like incredibly hard to pull off, even for the smartest, person who has the most willpower in the world, because it's really not about willpower. I guess that's the thing I ended up coming to the conclusion. It's really not about willpower. It's about understanding that there's a temporal dynamic here. Your brain is using your past in order to create your present, your future, basically, which becomes your present. You cannot go back into your past and change it. I mean, you can try with psychotherapy, but it's really not going to work very well.
You don't think you can recontextualize it?
Yeah, I think you can, but I think it's a struggle. But what you can do is you can change your present, which becomes your past, to predict your future. So you can think of it as you're always cultivating your past.
And what would that process look like? You're telling yourself a new story? You're giving yourself that new concept?
You're giving yourself new experiences so that you can learn to predict differently in the future automatically without willpower. But even more so, what I want to say is this, and so now I'm going to introduce this idea of a body budget in order to make the point that I wanted to make about what do you tell someone when they're stuck? Your brain's most important job is regulating your body, and it regulates all the systems in your body predictively. There's a fancy word for that. It's called allostasis. But I always describe it to people as think of it as a budget. Your brain is running a budget for your body, and it's not budgeting money. It's budgeting salt and glucose and water and all the things, oxygen, all the things that your cells need to function to keep you alive and well, to allow you to do your brain's most important job, right? Which is to pass your genes on to the next generation and have that next generation survive long enough to produce the next generation. I love that. Most people don't know that, actually, but that's right. And so it's running this budget. And so you can think of every new thing that you learn and every movement that you make as an expense on that budget. It's an investment. And everything you eat, every time you sleep, every hug you get from another person or whatever support that you get, those are like deposits. And so normally, like when you exercise, for example, you have it's a big expense. So your body budget is running a deficit briefly. So you feel, when you're exercising, I am not one of these people who like feels great when they exercise.
And me both.
And, I usually get to a point where I'm like, I fucking hate this and I want it to be over. And that's the point at which I'm really tempted to stop. But I know that not to stop. The feeling doesn't mean I'm out of energy. It just, I'm just starting to really run a deficit now. And now it's going to be unpleasant until I'm done. And then, if I replenish, right, if I make a deposit afterwards, I make sure that I drink enough and I eat something or whatever, and I get enough sleep that night and whatever, then my body budget is balanced. But what if you don't replenish? What if you're not sleeping well? What if you don't eat healthfully? It's funny that you mentioned protein, because that actually, it turns out brains, I think all brains except for 2 species on this planet, eat to a protein target, actually. So I always think of myself as being completely dominated by carbohydrates. I just, I have to work very hard not to eat carbohydrates. But actually, under the hood, my brain is doing what every other organism's brain is doing, and it's tabulating protein. So we can talk about that later. But I love that research because it so violates my own experience and intuitions. I just find it like completely fascinating. But okay, so but what if you live in a food desert? What if you don't have enough money to feed your family on a regular basis? What if you live in a sea of social ambiguity, which is uncertainty is very hard on a nervous system, really expensive. What if, you have a metabolic problem? Like maybe you have a problem with your mitochondria, which are the little powerhouses in your cells. You could be running a body budget, and the deficit is never big. It's the tax you pay is little. It's incremental. It's like a slow drip, and it just bores a hole, over time. So you're just going to feel like shit for a really long time. When you're in a situation like that, you can try all you want to, change how you think. But basically, your body has a grip on your brain. It's a conversation. Your brain is always controlling your body, and your body is sending information back to your brain. But if you are running a body budgeting deficit, you are going to feel like shit. And you may not be able to just think differently, in part because, remember, if we freeze the moment, your brain is representing what's in the world and what's in your body. And that's what it uses to make the next prediction, which becomes your perceptions and your thoughts. So if you are feeling like shit, what is your brain going to direct the thought to? Something negative in the past, something that's similar to the present from the past. So ruminating and being stuck might be freed up just by getting enough sleep that night. It might be freed up by just providing people with opportunities to have different experiences, and so they direct their attention to the world, and then they can create these different experiences for themselves. But if you're running a body budgeting deficit, it's not a matter of willpower. It could be actually impossible. And you won't be able to create new experiences for yourself, because the 2 most expensive things your brain can do are move your body and learn something new. Change its own wiring, right? And what do you do when you're running a deficit in your actual bank account? What do you do, Tom?
Stop. No more spending.
Stop spending. And so what does it mean for a brain to stop spending?
Chill, sit.
Become fatigued, You become fatigued. You feel your body feels heavy, like you can't move. And you stop learning. And you might even stop paying attention to the world. So you're just going with your internal model, the prediction that's running based on your past experience, and you're not even really adjusting to the context at all. And that, my friend, is the beginnings of depression.